everybody, and welcome back to another episode of our Principal Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us as we really talk about the focus work of the principal and how to make instructional leadership at the core focus of the work that you're doing. I'm Liz Rayburn, and I am the proud principal of Bryan County Middle High School. We are a 612 campus over in Pembroke, Georgia. We have about 1,100 students currently in our 612 model, and we are just finishing homecoming week, so it has been a crazy week at our school. I know many of you participate in Red Ribbon Week and Homecoming Week with dress-up days, and that always can cause a little more excitement to your learning environments. So hopefully you have survived that part of your year already. So the last couple times that we've gotten together, we've focused on a couple different things. The first time we met, we really talked about what is the role of the principal and how can you take 5 different steps and really think about how to make your principalship really be the lead learner on the campus. And part of that thought process was something really critical that we talked about in the beginning, and it was the November 1st. So we're heading into November really soon, and by this time you should really be able to think about what is that message and that story that you want your staff to know, that you want your community to know. By November, mid-November, that's about 90 days into the school year. So your staff should have a pretty good idea of what your expectations are as the lead learner in the school and what you are expecting in learning spaces. So take some time in the next couple days to really think about what your story tells you. What has your example and your work from the start of the school year, from that very first all-staff meeting to today, what kind of story does that tell to your staff in your school? And make sure that it's consistent with the work that you want to do as the principal of your school, right? So you really need to take stock in deciding, do you need to make some adjustments? If you do, now is the time. It's never too late. That's one of the beauty things about running a school and school leadership, is that we don't have to wait until the next school year to make changes. We can go ahead and make some of those changes now when we take stock and we know that changes need to be made, right? So think about that. Then the last time we talked about new teachers, because this is a pivotal time in education. We've got so many new teachers, new to the profession, brand new teachers, and how do we keep them engaged and excited and on board, and really build that network of support for them. So hopefully you found some really valuable takeaways in our first 2 sessions. Today, we're really going to start to dive into instructional leadership, which is probably my most favorite thing to really hit on and talk about, and also lead in my school. I don't know a lot about operations. I'm not good with drinking fountains and ball fields. So I've made sure to hire people way smarter than me that can do those things. But instructional leadership is really my bang for the buck, and it's where I spend most of my time as the principal, really delving in and focusing in on instructional leadership. So today, I want you to really think and focus on your learning spaces. And I want you to think, is your learning spaces in your school, each one individually, don't think of them collectively, are they museums or workshops? So think about that, and think about what you want them to be. Think about how you present in your staff meetings, how you present when you deliver a PL, how you present when you're in the PLC. Are you delivering instruction and professional learning to your staff in the way that you would expect them to teach your scholars in the learning space, right? So at the core focus of what we're going to hit on today, we're really thinking about workshop or museum and what that looks like in the learning space. So I have 4 key points that I want to hit on when we're thinking about what we're seeing in the learning space and how we are driving our teachers to create these opportunities and experiences for our scholars. The first one is engage, right? How do you engage your staff? So we're talking about the learning space, but in order to make a highly effective learning space, sometimes we have to be strategically creative and how we are using our staff. So how do you engage your staff to be excited for teaching and learning? How do you get them to take risks? Do they know it's okay to fail? Is it a safe space for them? So some things that we've done at Bryan County Middle School even this year has been, we do tickets for engagement. So the way we structure our classroom observations and how we get into learning spaces is pretty strategic. I want to make sure that I am in every single learning space, and there's 151 of them on our campus at least twice by the end of the first semester. And so once a week, I design who goes where, including my instructional coaches and APs, and that way I keep it on a rotation schedule and I can keep track of where I've been. I do that for Bullseye, which is a coaching tool that we use here in Bryan County, and I also do use it for TEKS, and sometimes I just also use it for just leaving a note, right? Not every time you go into a classroom has to be an observation. Not every time you go into a classroom has to be a TEKS. In fact, you should be so visible in your campus and on your school that your teachers don't even blink when you walk into the learning space, right? So the unit of change is always in the learning space. And so that's why it's really critical that as the principal and the lead learner, you stop and take stock of how often you're getting into those learning spaces and how you are strategically motivating your staff to do exciting lessons for their scholars. So some things that we've done, we did an activity a few weeks ago called Lucky Ducks. So Lucky Ducks was really fun. And what it was is we did our normal observation. I had it scheduled out, and we have a set look for. So in this particular situation, we were looking for the learning target needed to have a no and a do. And if they had that, then they earned a duck ticket. I made duck tickets, and then they got to pick on Friday out of the duck pond. I bought rubber ducks, had numbers on them, and they picked ducks for prizes, right? And so the goal was almost every single person that we visited, we made that a really attainable goal, right? Learning targets, that's an expectation in every classroom. You're going to have, students will be able to know this in order to do this. So Lucky Ducks was super successful, and we've done a couple other things. We try to do something at least once a month that is a contest or an engagement activity on our staff's part in order to help them be really motivated and think about designing great lessons. So that's number one, engage. Number two is activate. How do you continue to support your staff as they muddle through sometimes new curriculum, old curriculum? They're trying out something new for the first time. So what are you doing to help kind of support that activation and then ultimately sustain it, right? So here, like I talked about, we do the classroom visit weekly schedule. We also are really intentional about what is the return on our work. If we are doing something like visits, what's the return in terms of our scholars achieving, our teachers thinking differently about their instruction? What do our PLCs look like? Are we using our PLC time to commiserate about sometimes the not joyful parts of teaching? Or are we using our PLC time to really dig into the data and who's leading that PLC work? So something to think about, but activating and making sure that you are getting a high return on the things that you're doing and planning is really, really important. Sharing. Critical, right? That's the third step of what we want to talk about today, is how do we share the great work that's going on in your classrooms? So think about it for a minute. Think about your top 2, 3, 4 learning spaces in your rooms. They come to you. They're your runners, right? They're your teachers who are constantly getting after it, trying new things, going above and beyond the call of duty, never doing it for anything other than just the love of our kids and the love of teaching. So think about those people and think about how you can leverage them into your school to help promote the great things that you're seeing in their school or in their learning space, right? You can do speed dating activities, you can do classroom swaps, you can I have covered many a times for teachers and covered their class for them in order for them to go to another learning space so they can catch some great ideas. So think about what you can do to really leverage your teachers who are crushing it in your school and use them to help spread the great instructional work that's happening around your campus. And the last one is reflect. And this is really, really critical because it's so important in the work that we do that we aren't always doing something for a TEKS. I feel really strongly about that. I feel really strongly that there's never been a classroom, even the world's worst classroom that I've been in 23 years, and you've been in some bad classrooms, right? There's never been a classroom I've been in where I can't find the silver lining. So think about, how do you communicate to your staff when they're crushing it, when they need a little bit more support? How do you find that silver lining, and how do you communicate that to them? So a tip that we like to use here at Bryan County Middle School is we always do a note card. No matter if it's a TEKS or a bullseye or whatever it is, the expectation here is you will always do a note card, and it will always be very specific and intentional. It's going to model the exact feedback that you want your teachers to give to students to grow, right? So you have to be thinking, what you want to see in the learning space, you have to model as the principal, right? The second thing to think about in your feedback is something that we call value add, push. So when you are working with instruction and you're working with your teachers and you're writing a note or you're giving coaching feedback, think about what you've just seen. Where's the value? Validate the value. Give them something to value add. What is something that you can add? You're the instructional leader. What can you add to give them some value add that they can think about for the next lesson? And then the push. What is something that you can do, suggest, think about, reflect on that'll help push them to take it to the next level? So value add, push. That should all be part of your feedback. And always remember that if you are constantly being visible, and we talked about this early on in session 1, your visibility matters, and it's very critical to the buy-in and the work that we do as instructional leaders, right? If you are constantly visible and you are working in your learning spaces and you are in the hallways and you are high-fiving and you are checking in on teachers, that's always going to give you a high return on your practices for instruction, right? So that's kind of it in a nutshell today. I do want you to walk away today thinking about 2 things. Learning space, museum or workshop. What does it look like for you? Think about how to schedule strategic visits so you can get to those classrooms, so you can really analyze and think about, is this a workshop or is this a museum? And then think about how you are going to give some feedback to help our teachers validate what they're doing and to give them some value add, and push. I really hope that you are keeping instructional leadership at the front of your game. It is the most important work that we do as principals. I know that we do a lot of things as principals and we wear a ton of hats, but the more time that you can focus on instructional leadership, the bigger bang for your buck you're gonna get. Your school is gonna feel it, your climate and culture is gonna change, and most importantly, your scholars are going to achieve. So thank you so much for joining me today. As always, hit me up on Twitter at MissLiz31 or drop me an email at erayburn, and have an awesome Celebrate Monday. Bye, y'all.